So my awesome bar mitzvah student, Nate Atkins, we talked about this. How do you begin and end a Devar Torah? With what words? Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. That's how we know that it's Devar Torah time. I actually hadn't seen Wicked until recently, even though it debuted more than 20 years ago. And I'm a pretty big musical theater fan. So when it came to San Francisco a couple months ago on stage, I went and saw it. And I thought it was okay. I stuck my nose up at it a little bit even, thinking it's a kid's show and it's fantastical and magical. I dismissed it in favor of my usual sophisticated Stephen Sondheim musicals. But now that it came out in theaters, I went and saw it twice. I've listened to the soundtrack endlessly. Noah and I sing it at home constantly. I even bought the book. It was based off a novel. Bought it for vacation. And I embarrassingly suggest to people who are wearing pink and green on the street that, are you an Alphaba or are you a Glinda? And I've embarrassed myself a number of times with that because they didn't intend to dress like them at all. These stories come along once in a while that stick with me because of their deeper themes and their more universal messages, even when they're packaged in something like the story of the Wizard of Oz or Wicked, the story of the Wicked Witch of the West before she became known as Wicked. And it reminded me of a similar story that was also portrayed in musical theater, and that is the story of Joseph. Andrew Lloyd Webber wrote a musical about the story of Joseph, which is found in this week's Torah portion by Yeshev. The musical, which also has a movie version featuring Donny Osmond and Maria Friedman, is known as Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat. Joseph was Jacob's youngest son, and he was his favorite son, which was symbolized by the Ketonet Pasim, which is often translated as the Technicolor Dreamcoat. But he was favored with this coat, and really Ketonet Pasim probably means something more like striped tunic, something different that stood out from his brothers, who were shepherds, wearing probably rags and tattered beige clothing. And so Joseph walked around, prideful, flamboyant even, some commentators say, with the Ketonet Pasim, his Technicolor Dreamcoat. But Joseph's true distinction lies not in his outfit, but in his gift for dreaming and interpreting the dreams with great accuracy, which is an ability that both alienates him from his brothers, because he has some pretty bad dreams about them being subservient to Joseph, which they don't appreciate. But this same gift elevates him to power later on. This story is much like Elphaba from Wicked, who is scorned for her green skin and her magical powers until it's transformed for the greater good, or so we think. Elphaba is ostracized for her differences. And like Joseph, her gifts are initially scorned, but they're later recognized and used by those in power. Both Joseph and Elphaba discover that being elevated by leaders like Pharaoh or the Wizard of Oz come with dangers of their own. Their abilities, once dismissed, are now manipulated for political gain. Joseph's story begins with his brother's jealousy. He shares his dreams, his visions of the sheaves bowing down, of the sun and the moon, of the stars bowing to Joseph and Joseph only. And Joseph's brothers resent him, and they toss him in a pit, leaving him for dead. That is until a group of slave purchasers come by and they sell him into slavery willingly, where he's carried to Egypt and soon after thrown into jail, into prison. But despite their betrayal, Joseph's gifts for interpreting dreams actually becomes his salvation. Because in Egypt, while he's in prison, the Pharaoh, not that Pharaoh, we'll come to him in a minute, but the previous Pharaoh who rules over Egypt, gets wind of Joseph's extraordinary power and takes him out of jail and elevates him to political office, advising the Pharaoh and overseeing matters in the kingdom. Elphaba's journey parallels this in many ways. She's mocked and misunderstood. Her magical abilities catch the attention of Madame Morrible and the Wizard of Oz. who manipulate her to serve their own ends. Like Joseph, she transitions from an outcast to a key player in a powerful kingdom, but at a great personal cost. Both characters, Joseph and Elphaba, are celebrated for their unique gifts, while at the same time being exploited by those in power. These stories could end in tales of triumph, but they don't. Joseph's success under his Pharaoh is later fleeting because the next Pharaoh comes to power at the beginning of our Exodus story, and this Pharaoh famously knew not Joseph and enslaves the Israelites, leading to our saga in the Exodus story. Elphaba too finds that the wizard is not a true leader, but he's a fraud with no power at all, pulling levers behind a curtain, exploiting her for political gain. Both of these stories can remind us that power can corrupt and that dreams can be co-opted by those in authority. On April 4th, 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a modern-day dreamer, was assassinated while standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. Like Joseph, like Elphaba, he was mocked and threatened for his dreams, yet he persisted in guiding his people toward a vision of equality and justice. At the site where Dr. King was slain, there's a little shrine set up to him with some engravings in the floor of the balcony. It's a verse from our Torah portion this week. Vayomru ish elechav hine bala chalamot halazeba. Here comes the dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of these pits. And then let's see what comes of his dreams. This verse reminds us that while dreamers may face violence, their dreams endure, inspiring the generations. What becomes of the dreams of Joseph, Elphaba, or Dr. King? Their stories remind us that the light of a dream can never truly be extinguished. This brings us into Hanukkah, which is about defying darkness and keeping dreams alive. The Talmud teaches that the basic mitzvah, the basic obligation of celebrating Hanukkah is to light one candle per household, per night of Hanukkah. Just one. But many choose to light 8, and they're considered going above and beyond. The small flame, the one single candle that's required of us, reminds us that even a single light or a single dream can illuminate the darkest of rooms, the darkest of times. As Joseph's brothers said, and as is written at the Lorraine Motel, we shall see what happens to those dreams. The stories we talked about tonight of Joseph, of Elphaba, of Dr. King are more than just stories about colorful coats or green skin or dreams. They challenge us to see beyond appearances, to recognize the power of dreams to transform individuals and societies. So when we light our Hanukkah candles in the coming days, let's all try to commit to keeping dreams alive, to doing what it takes to keep those dreams alive, and to spread light, just one small light, even in the darkest of times. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.